I think it's time for us to switch and talk to Sherry now. I think many of you will know Sherry. She's been around in legal IT for a little while, like most of us.
Just a little while.
A little while. And Sherry's going to talk about styles today, which is, of course, the main focus of Document Excellence Group, was the reason it was started all those years ago. So I'm handing over to Sherry right now. How are you?
Thank you. Good. I just did the horrifying math equation, which was exactly how long have I been involved in legal documents and, you know, all things document geekland. And when you all consider that maybe you can help me with this math because it's really hard for me to confess. I started working at the really legacy microsystems in February of 1984. How long is that? That's
like
40 years. 40 years.
4 decades. This is like me confessing that it's really hard to do. I will say that. Welcome everyone. Today what we are going to talk about is the Document Excellence Group and their standard style framework. But we're also, not only are we going to talk about the sort of formation of it, and Kim Walton is here. I believe Sheila will be here sometime soon. And they're going to help us with the understanding how we came up with it. And then because I really started my whole kind of life and profession, honestly, by being a journalist, I'm going to tell you all, I am not going to bury the lead, okay? The very first thing I'm going to tell you all is, and I have a slide, but I'm just going to read it because then I won't be able to see all of you, and that will be troublesome. Basically, what I want to say to you all is that the Document Excellence Group, this is the lead, should embark on extending the DEG Styles framework to become a global legal standard. Now, if I had this slide up, I'd make us all liturgically recite this and read it. But I really want to emphasize, we absolutely need to do this. There has not been, honestly, a time in legal, in my opinion, the whole global industry, where standards are not more prevalent and more possible than right now. And there are several reasons for that. First of all, there are technology transformations happening at every layer of our tech stack. Think about the document management systems. Think about what knowledge management is trying to do. Think about AI. Think about every single thing that we work with on the desktop, all of our Microsoft 365 applications. We have no better moment to declare a standard than right now. There are lots of things that go into it though. And so if I can, the first question I want to ask this entire group is, how many of you are using the DEG Standard Styles Framework today? Do we have reactions set? Do they work? Okay, so we have Ange. We probably have Kim.
I think hands, if people can put their hands up, that would be good. We can see that. Yeah, there's one.
Okay, look at that. We have quite a few already. Probably 7 now. So with that, I guess I want us all to step back and think, you know, why aren't the rest of us using it? Why aren't the rest of us using it? Ah, Sheila's there too.
It's difficult to get the firm, everybody in the firm on board to adopt something developed outside the firm.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yes, for us, it is the sheer volume of work that will be involved in making that transformation. And also the fact that generally, although we deem documents to be quite important it's not that technical, and people don't actually see it as that important, and it's going to take a lot of resource and checking and everything else that it almost is too daunting for anyone to tackle.
Okay, so it seems, unless I'm misinterpreting both Richard and Sheila here, it seems to me that the challenge is really that of adopting it, of actually achieving a kind of almost, I hate the word, honestly, but conversion, right? A conversion of the way things are being done today within your firm to then asserting why the standard is there. So, Kim, can I call on you to answer a couple questions about the formation of the framework? Because I cannot imagine that how many ever years ago the framework was established, these issues weren't also still in force. So tell us, what was the problem you were all trying to solve when you established the DEG styles framework?
Okay, so just stepping back slightly, the DEG was already established before we did the Standard Styles Initiative. So we've been going for a few years, and it was at one of the meetings that we had that we discussed the issues that all firms were facing when documents were being sent back and forward. So generally we're lawyers copying paragraphs from different documents and pasting them in, and bearing in mind this was back when we were still on doc file format, and when you were pasting things, all the styles were coming across and we were getting quite a lot of corrupt numbering. So we came up at that meeting, we came up with this idea of, what if we all used the same style names, then would the issues with copying and pasting between them go away? And we certainly felt that it would reduce them. And then the next element in this project was setting up a working party to go and look and say, okay, if we did have the same styles names, what should they be and why?
So Kim used a couple of a phrase in there, a working party, and I believe this was probably a year ago on the organizing committee. We were talking about where exactly does everything happen within the DEG? And what was the answer?
Where does everything happen within the DEG? Well, we have working parties to work on various initiatives. So we've had one for the events. We've had one for the standard styles in the past for the framework.
Exactly.
And I think I know where you're going with this, Sherry.
Yes. So put on our list that in order to achieve a standard, we are going to need not one, but several working parties to accomplish this. Okay. This is not going to be something that can be established in a vacuum, because no standard is defined by just a couple of people. It happens with a much larger group, or it won't be established. So Kim, another question that I had for you is, what approaches did you take to even embark on this? I mean, I think Albert Einstein's, my favorite quote of his is, if any idea does not at first sound absurd, there is very little hope for it. So imagine Kim and this group 15 years ago sitting down and saying, we have this idea, everybody use the same style name. How on earth did you get started? What approaches did you take?
Well, we had some contacts from people who were part of DEG, so we reached out to those first and sat down with them and discussed what style system they were using, why they were using it. Often they didn't know why. It was like that when I joined the firm, and that hasn't been changed. And then we talked about what works well and what doesn't work well, and then we would ask a bit more probing questions about, you know, issues that we thought they might have come across. So do you have any issues with a table of contents, or what happens if you're using numbering in schedules? And then so we started to pull together what was good practice, what didn't work so well, And we also reached out to a number of vendors because there was quite a few consultants who'd been involved with law firms in setting up their template systems in the first place. So talked to them about why they had chosen some of the, or made some of the decisions that we did. And then we quite quickly discounted. So go back. One of the things that we wanted to do was, if we wanted to create a standard, then we wanted to use style names that indicated how that style would be used. And very early on, we got a comment back saying, why are you calling the style heading 4 when it's not a heading, it's a numbered paragraph? So we thought, oh, well, that's a good reason why we can't just go with the native word styles. So we came up with this idea of having level 1 heading and level 1 numbering because we needed flexibility to do them. So yeah, we started building the names together, and in conjunction with the names, it was really important to get a sort of a structure of how the styles would work, because we wanted to make sure that they would hold together and we'd work on all the types of legal documents that we were creating.
So one of the things about the framework, if you all have been to the website and taken a look at what that is, it lists the names, it lists the purpose of that portion of the document. And that is one of the other things, Kim, I wanted to make sure that we shared with everyone. This was based on what kind of document and what kind of document exchange?
So it was based on, I think we were a bit fortunate in the UK that our documents all look quite similar. They just tend to vary in terms of how numbering is used depending on the length of the document. So do you have headings and subheadings, numbered subheadings, or do you just have one level of numbering? But what we tried to do was have something that would work for pretty much every legal agreement that we would generally come across. So, which is about 75%, I would say, of the types of documents that we share and pass back and forward between law firms.
All right. So I think that's another thing that we all recognize, is that there has to be a problem that we're all solving. Now, I appreciated how kind you were to the US in that comment, which was to say that you're fortunate in the UK that you have documents that are similar. For those of us in the US, we've basically we just don't do that really, and this makes it even more complicated. So for us, however, I still say that we go forward and extend the style framework so we can establish some standards. So that brings me to another question for all of you. If you want to put this in the chat, if you want to shout it out, go right ahead. But think about some standards that you use in your daily work today. Generally, they're all like 3 letters, 4 letters, maybe a number. PDF is one, just to get everyone started. Joe, you know another one. I know, because you work in that group. You established the training standards, right? Legal training standards, competency standards, the LTC4. So that's another standard in legal.
Well, yeah, in that particular case, what LTC4's learning plan and working with legal documents is actually a workflow-based learning plan. So it doesn't, it requires people to show that they know what their styles are and how they work.
Right, so but you establish a kind of standard that is known throughout the legal community. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, absolutely. So has anybody used Sally? Does anybody know what Sally is? It is a new, well, emerging, it's not really new, but it's an emerging alliance called the Standards Advancement for the Legal Industry. And the goal of it, the aim of it, is to recognize and categorize various bits of content. Who's heard of LEADS? LEADS is a billing strategy, a billing standard. So this is what I'm saying. What we do is we ride the coattails of these other standards that are established, and we connect to them in a way, much like Kim and the original group who created the framework did, connect with them to see how we can go about operationalizing the creation of this legal industry standard. So I want to basically take, I think my next question is the benefits. And again, Kim, what are the benefits that you all now realized in using the DEG styles, and how did you extend them beyond that legal agreement?
Well, for me, because we introduced them in Denton's more than 10 years ago now, but I fully appreciate what Sheila was saying. It is a lot of work. We had lots of precedent documents, so we made sure that we got all of those converted before we kind of started rolling out the training. But we did have some issues with numbering. So prior to that, the Denton Hall and Wildsapp had a merger, and we put a scheme in place. That was before I joined the firm, but there was a scheme in place that tried to keep it really simple and make it easy for people to use, but actually it didn't have the flexibility, and there was a number of issues that we already had with our styles. So we were looking to do a change anyway. We implemented part of it, so there was a definition style scheme that we didn't have in our document. So we implemented that before we went for the full standard styles option, and we also tied in that integration, that change at the same time as we were upgrading to, or changing to iManage and upgrading to a later version of Office. And I can see one of our trainers that used to work with me is on the call as well. So I think probably talk about a little bit about how the training was done. But I'd say that we quite quickly saw the benefits of it, because it had been difficult for lawyers to fully comply with our house style previously, because we didn't have the flexibility. And we had numbering issues when they were using numbering in schedules, and we had quite convoluted ways of doing table of contents. So even though there was more styles available than we had previously, it definitely simplified the user experience. And my views was, when I came across a document that wasn't in standard styles, I'd be thinking, oh, I wish this was in standard styles. And then so we really pushed for it, and then the trainers did a great job of promoting it. And we even got some lawyers coming and saying, oh, you created this scheme for us to work with my complex documents. So yeah, I think that it was a long time ago, but yeah, I'm really pleased that I did it. But I don't think, if I hadn't had some of the problems that I had, I would have had to think really carefully about whether I wanted to make the move or not. And I think that's why there's a lot of firms that haven't made the move, because they didn't have the problems that we were having.
And I think that therein lies something that we all have to really catalog. So another part of a working party is, what problems would it solve? Because honestly, we really won't have any momentum if we do not express what are the problems this would solve. Now, it is a daunting process. So who can think of something that we might get started on, much like the original DEG groups working on this, focused on a specific document type? Is there something specific we can agree upon that we could start working on that would be global? Anybody?
Well, would we consider something as simple as letter, LMF, letter, memo, fax?
We could.
I mean, that's not so much legal.
But the interesting thing is that many letters are kind of a core element to engagement letters or client memos or the like. And I think one of the first standards we should all agree on is Why do we need a fax?
Good point.
It's just one word now. Letter, memo, fax is just one word now in
It's a
technology.
What's a fax, Richard? I don't know what a fax is. What is it?
No, I think we should all just, forget. But in any way, okay, so we could start with that. Sheila, you have an idea what we could start with?
Yes, and that is not a template at all. Is
Yes.
to look at where Microsoft is going with the numbering systems, to see what we've got aligned in the standard document kind of framework, and see what we need to do moving forward, because the landscape is changing and changing very fast. We did this some 15 years ago, and yes, it's evolved a little bit, but what does the future hold? Let's have a peek into that bucket and see what we need to do moving forwards.
May I lobby for something related to that, Sheila? Okay, table of contents. Can we not get a grip on how we all decide to do table of contents? Because this, picking our poison for the last 25 years has really, it's had enough airtime.
Yeah.
Would you all agree the table of contents could be something we could rally around? Yes? Okay. One of the other elements, Ange and I spoke about this last week. One of the other elements I think we also need to have as our part of our standard is absolutely, we need to add the layer, the level, the overarching accessibility standard to our framework, because it's not expressed in there at the present time. So we need an accessibility standard from our group. Who can tell me anything else? Any other place we could get started?
One of the other things you might want to consider is what goes across all types of documents. So one of the things that we've been very successful with our styles is it doesn't matter if it's a letter, memo, we don't have fax anymore.
Yay!
An agreement, a pleading, it doesn't matter. It's always the same style name. So it might be formatted differently depending on the type of the document, because like in a pleading, it would need to be like a body double, but its functionality just changes, but the name stays consistent. So you don't have to know, hey, in this document it's this style and in this document it's this style. You just know the baseline, hey, this is a first line indent paragraph for this type of paragraph, for this type of document, or this is a 1-inch indent for this type of document. It doesn't matter what type of document. So the styles just stay consistent throughout the document templates.
They transfer across all the document types within your firm. And I think that is a really good design ethic. And in fact, I know several of the firms on here, you have already done that with, say, a core set of styles. There are also, additional ones, but I think a standard for a core style set across all document types in a firm. So now I have another question. Many of you are at global firms. How do you all handle that? How do you handle that when there's different regions and different languages and different interpretations of the prefix word on a numbering scheme? It's not section in anything other than English. So what do you guys do for that? I think that's another thing we need to consider. Global. Some kind of global approach. And I wondered, Kim, did that happen in the DEG styles framework?
No.
No. It was a UK standard, and we were making the assumption that the documents would be in English. But having said that, we do dual language documents, so we've got English and Arabic documents, and what we have done with them is just added AR to the style names to create the Arabic equivalent. So that's a prefix for all of the standard style names. But that wasn't something that we agreed as a DEG. That was just our firm's way of doing it. And just on the templates, we've introduced the standard style scheme across letters. I'd love to get rid of factors, but they're still hanging around. But yeah, because we do get agreements that are sent out in the form of a letter, so it's really for having that all of those numbering schemes and styles that you would need in an agreement to be available, but we're not using them in something like a pitch document.
Okay. So I recognize we have moments to go. Well, actually, right. We have only a few minutes, Ange. My time check.
It wasn't a time check, actually. I was just saying the same considerations apply in some ways when you're working in firms that have different practice areas with different format preferences across different practice areas as well. So it works across different practice areas, and we can extrapolate that globally as well. Anyway, yes, you're right. We are running short on time. So
we are short on time, but I'm going to say one final area of our extended style standard approach, and I'll bring out, you know, the big evil group of people called vendors or suppliers or business partners, of which I am definitely one. And what I want to assert here is that there has to be a special category for vendors. And what I'm meaning by this is that not only do the legal vendors in this community need to know of and be aware of these standards, that in order for them to say they are standards compatible, they're going to have to alter their practices to take advantage of this and to commit to this. And oh, by the way, participate in a huge way for this, because why? In order to make the transformation that's going to happen or have to happen. Again, Kim, you know, you all went through it essentially in a kind of bespoke approach, really, because you didn't have a vendor that necessarily supported you on getting, you know, these things done within your document set. And so my point is that I feel that there needs to be a special vendor group working alongside this to offer up, you know, a standard. Maybe it's a transport. If you all think about converters, we used to go out to RTF to then go to Word, or we used to go out to a certain standard black box format to get to any other solution. And I think we need that kind of transfer approach, or we're never ever going to do that. Even if you're Sheila, to your point, your firm didn't change its internal style names. And maybe that's one of the things you all decide not to do. But what should happen is there should be a way from those styles to the standard styles. There should be something that is established, that there is an export mechanism to translate that, so that everyone can, you know, can work from there, even if they decide inside their firm to keep their own style names. Does that make sense? I know it's a little bit of a leap at the very last minute, but we really have to have a way to facilitate this, or it won't work. So the next step is, I have counted, are you with me? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 working parties. 8 different working parties in order to achieve what we need to do. So once again, taking a big deep breath, do we feel this is the right time? Do we feel that, okay, let me say it more plainly. Do we feel like we want to spend another minute of our careers dealing with this? Except to make it better for the people who are after us.
It seems like a very good idea. Yeah, 8 working parties is a challenge.
I can't count how many, there's what, 60 people here or so. How many elbows that is and how much elbow grease that is, but this is going to be a lot of work. Okay.
And Sheila, so Sherry, I was just going to say that if you can come up with a solution where you can keep your internal styles and have it export as something else externally, then you can use that to, if you wanted to, just change internal as well.
Exactly.
Wow.
That's quite a nut to crack, though.
This is huge. I said, this is big. And Kim and Sheila, because I know the both of you were involved in the beginnings of this, I just want to say thank you for giving us such a great step forward. And let's make this more widely known. Let's make this something that 5 years from now we can say we did, and we were at this meeting, and we can pull this off. Because honestly, our leadership, none of our leadership wants to deal with the style discussion. Every CIO runs for the hills when they hear about it.
So, thank you so much, Sherry. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Can I just add one thing? Because there is a number of suppliers or groups in the UK that are starting to do standards, or have been for a while, of the actual content of documents. So we've got the Loan Market Association standard for banking. We've got another association that deals with leases, and then we've got another one for investment banks. We've never been able to get quick enough in with those providers to say, if you're going to be creating templates, can we get in and talk to you about the styles? So years ago we did do it with LexisNexis, so they were doing it for their own presidents, but we didn't manage to do it with any other providers of actual legal content as well as just the technology side. So I think that's another vendor element that we can try and capture.
Barry, is that where Sally comes in?
Sally comes in within the kind of classification of content, and it is. I have never seen anything in legal get adopted so darn fast.
Right.
And so we're going to ride their coattails. Yeah. We are.
Yeah.
That's what we're going to do.
Is that gaining traction in the UK? Because I know it was very much a US initiative, and I know there were people involved, but we took a look at it and said not quite yet, but it might have moved on since then.
So then I think the UK needs to join in, because you have document classification. I mean, it's not like our problems are unique.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So, okay. When we come back next, we're going to have our working parties formed, what they need to be. We'll be chasing you for volunteering. And I want to thank Joe and Ange for setting up this conversation, because it's been long unrequited and we need to do this.
Sherry, you're right. Thanks so much.
Absolutely.
We're a little over time, but thanks everyone for joining today. And please contact us if you would like to become part of this very important project. info@dogexcellence.com, and just keep in touch.
Okay.